also the chairman of the IGBC Bangalore chapter. And next we have Hassam Saifi, managing director of DC Pro. And last but not least, Tamer Hamad, chief information officer for Dubai Cable Company. Why don't we welcome them to the platform? Thank you.
So a warm welcome to everybody. And this is our first event in Dubai, and we are sort of overwhelmed with the kind of reactions we've got so far. So let me start off this panel discussion. And this panel discussion is a little different from some of the others. That is, how do we have a sustainable and a balanced data center landscape? Now, that could be an oxymoron of sorts. For example, data is getting consumed day in, day out at rates which are unprecedented, and things which we have probably not even witnessed in our past. But at the same time, there is also pressing needs on sustainability, because this cannot just go on and on forever. So then the whole topic of how do we balance these two is something which we'll look to discuss through this panel. So let me just ask all the panelists to introduce themselves so that you will all get a sense of where they are going to come from. I mean, which part of technologies and which sort of thoughts do they have? So let me just pass around. Tim, you could just introduce.
Hi, Tim Bawtree, founder and CEO of Quantum Switch. We set up 4 years ago in the region, particularly bringing our experience from Europe, having built data centers for the last 25 years, from the UK to the Nordics to Europe, and even as far away as Australia, and taking that experience and bringing it to the region. We currently are investing nearly $3 billion across the region into Saudi, Qatar, here, and Oman and Jordan across the GCC.
Good afternoon, friends. My name is Syed Mohammed Beary. I chair the Indian Green Building Council Bangalore chapter. I'm also the founder of Bearys Group. We are primarily into design, build, deliver of data center in Pan-India. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tamer Hamad, and I'm the Chief Information Officer of DUCAP. I'm coming to elaborate on my experience on the data center, on-prem and the cloud, and more talking about the IoT and IIoT and the efficiency of this connecting to the cloud, and the most importancy of the cloud to serve this new era of technology.
Hello, my name is Hassam Saifi. I'm Managing Director of DC Pro. We're a design consultancy company. We provide engineering, design, and consulting services for industrial projects, mission-critical facilities, including data centers, helping providing advisory for energy markets, mergers and acquisitions of energy assets. We're based in the Netherlands and working with many key data center hyperscale developers, and we're partner of Dutch Data Center Association as well. So there's lots of clients looking, also expanding or entering the GCC or Middle East market. Me personally have been working here in Dubai, Middle East for more than 15 years. So obviously it's of great interest to us, and happy to be here, exchange ideas, see how what is the future, and have as much as we can contribute to the sustainable growth of this business as well.
Thank you so much. So we have a varied panel coming from different walks of the data center landscape. So let me start off with Tim, with you. And can you give us a sense on what kind of next-gen technologies will be prevalent in data centers per se going forward?
So I think the main challenge is obviously environment in the GCC, and the efficiencies around a number of different areas, from what goes into the server, the chips, all the way through to how we cool the data centers, but also how do we connect that? How do we generate that power? Where does that power come from? Is it solar? Is it wind? Is it more traditional gas? or oil. So there's lots of different environments. So there needs to be a balance across all of it. Solar doesn't always work. Wind doesn't always. There isn't always a good wind in parts of the region to be able to do these things. So in my opinion, it all starts with the power source. And how do you create a balance across the different power sources using building management services, building energy services, storage, batteries, and then looking into the future. How good is hydrogen going to be? Is that a means? Is immersion cooling a solution? But everything that we do as an operator and a builder and operator, it has to have a 15 to 20 year life cycle. How do we allow for the design for a technology that's going to come in 5 years' time when we're building a building that's $250 million? And so those are some of those changes. And how do we design in a way that we can swap out, go from air cooled to immersion cooled? How do we introduce renewables into the MV and LV? So I think for me, it starts at the power. Then you look at the efficiency of the buildings, and then finally you're looking at which is probably the last port of call is how efficient are the chips and the servers that are going into the building. Those seem to be the clients like to have. They don't tend to like to move from what they know, and that's one of the other challenges on the other end of this.
That's interesting. Mr. Beary, if I could come to you, same question from a data center build point of view. What sort of trends what sort of technologies do you see going forward in this whole?
As Mr. Kamil mentioned in the first session, that the earth has come to us not from our grandfather. We borrowed it from our grandchildren. So that is a responsibility, that is a commitment every one of us should have. To put things in perspective, the data center power consumption is almost 3% of the global power consumption. It is as much as the entire power what is required for the UK. That's what we are using in the data center. The greenhouse gas is almost 2%, which is like an entire aviation industry. So you must see from that perspective. I was just looking at. I believe. I'm in IT. Space provider from last about 36 years also. 1986, when Texas Instruments came to India, we were the one who provided the space for them. At that point of time, people used to talk about 100 kVA power for 1 kVA power for 100 square foot, rather 1.2 kVA power for 100 square foot. And we have also built India's first LEED Platinum property. It's about 1.4 million square foot, mainly as an R&D and lab space. Now, adjacent to that, we built a data center, which is our first data center, about 6 years back for NTT Japan. This is about 300,000 square foot with 20 megawatts of power. One side, 300,000 square foot of area and 20 megawatts of power. And adjacent is 1.4 million square foot of IT and R&D park with supposed to, we planned for 10 megawatts of power, but we are managing less than 4 megawatts of power. And that has really disturbed me. I said something fundamentally wrong. We cannot go on like this just because, profit is catching up. Profit should not be the only criteria. We should also need to work about the sustainability in a real sense. That is where, in the first session, I saw the great deal of, hope, because unlike other part of the country, world, where people are, the data center is becoming a sunrise industry. Everybody is talking about data center. Nobody is talking less than 50 megawatts of power. It's all big numbers. Whereas in GCC and MENA region, you are just reaching that, cups of the development. You are in that crossroad. And in that point of view, if the MENA region, if the GCC region can adapt to the sustainability, that is where that will be the game changer. We need to design, because data center is all about design optimization. That's a key. That's an absolute key. That design optimization, it is not only in respect of the design of the data center, even the selection of the land parcel. where you're going to select the property. Where you're going to, here you are lucky, you have enough and more power, but that is not the case everywhere, in other part of the world. So selection of the land, the design optimization, then the distribution. In the design, it happens like everywhere you want redundancy, and to redundancy has gone to such an extent to give a different perspective. You see, like for example, earlier days when you go for a long drive in our car, what we used to have, we have 4 wheel, we used to have 1 stepney. We call it as a stepney. Sometimes some guys are, overcautious about their life. They say keep 2 stepneys. But today, 4 wheels, but 12 stepneys. Redundance on redundance. Redundant on redundance. That is where we need to optimize. And for everything, the answer is, no sir, it is a mission critical. Boss, my friend, your thing is a mission critical. Going in a car is a life critical. It is also equally important, right? So that mindset we need to change. And the reason here again, because the end user always comes with a checklist. They have a 100 points checklist. And I started telling people it is no more a checklist, it is a tick list. Because they want all the 100 points to be ticked. So they must change the name from the checklist to the tick list. So unless and until you do that, the design optimization, distribution, you imagine more the cable, more the, termination, everything, there is a loss of power. Then the equipment, what equipment we are going to use. And ultimately, the operational efficiency. That is what we need to work about, and that's the only way forward as a sustainable data center, we can contribute to the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beary. Tamar, if you could comment on this, you come from a...
Mr. Beary already mentioned everything in a very well part, but I'm talking about, if you are talking about the next generation of technology, I think from a perspective of a user of all the data center technology and all of this, I think everybody now is going to the cloud, and none of the CEOs and the chief digital officers across the region, they are not. One of their strategies is to move to the cloud, and everybody is moving to the cloud right now. Moving to the cloud now, it's not an option. That's number one. Number two, the option here next to the cloud is not me as a CIO. I'm not looking for the power or for the sustainability. Yes, we are looking for sustainability as a data center, but from the other point, we are looking more for the availability of the data center. That's our most important part. How the data center, how my systems and platform and data is available 24/7. That's my concern. Number two, how to provide an artificial intelligence based on the cloud. The main reason of moving to the cloud is to reduce the headache, which my colleagues on the previous panel, we discussed about the same, how we can reduce the intervention of the hyper tech stuff, and how we can make it available all the time. So I think that artificial intelligence and machine learning will have a lot of contribution on this, and that's what everybody is looking for in the new era. So talking about power and talking about sustainability, availability, infrastructure, it's very good. It's having its own engineers and own part. But me as a customer, I'm always looking to the point from the perspective of availability. So with the technology right now available everywhere, I think everybody is looking, and the expansion which everybody is looking for, so the cloud is the most important part which everybody is looking for and thinking about right now. I think that's my point.
Hessam, so you have a bigger view from where you sit also, in that sense that you consult so many different enterprises across different regions. So how do you see this next gen technology build out and in data centers? How does that shape up?
Looking at it from a different angle, as a data center, like if you divide it into two, IT part and the energy side, but there obviously the different technology which is being developed on the IT and the service sides, because currently we're working on let's say sort of a traditional chipset models on the CPUs for the processing power, whereas they reaching the limit of increasing the power. So there are lots of technology development, next gen development to be more specific type CPU task specific type of the CPUs being developed there. On the HPC sides, we are seeing a development of a new, let's say, next-gen CPUs, which they are cooled by hot water, which are being adopted in a few example locations in the world, mainly on the research in a small scale size. But these are promising also some promising technologies that you're able to cool a data center with 60, 90 degree water and have very high efficiency. There's in a part to that, you have quantum computing, neuromorphic computing. So these are other parallel technologies which is still in their infancy, but developing. But more talking on the energy side, which is more my expertise. I think the current world challenge is more on the sustainability. So, and it's obvious that data centers to enable us for all these digital transformation, cloud services that we're talking about, they consume power, and power is the major energy input to any data center. Different part of the region maybe the percentage of the power and the IT is a bit different, but obviously we need to have some technologies which makes this sustainable and to somehow meet our goals. And there are developments here, as I mean, they are not next gen, but there are the technologies there. So we have hydrogen, for example, as one energy source. We have now there is another trending thing is SMRs. These are the nuclear small scale nuclear power plant. These are called small modular reactors, which instead of the traditional nuclear power plants, which they were in gigawatts, now they're able to give hundreds of megawatts in a modular format. Even now, some manufacturers are trying below 100 megawatts, which could be a promising green energy source. But and fuel cells using hydrogen is also very trending. There are examples of all of this as pilot project. But what is very important is that to know that having the technology and developing that is one thing, but developing it and adopting it as a scale is completely a different ballgame. Like, there are these technologies being used, but if you look at the projection of the growth of the data centers, it is very important to not to focus on one, to have all of these technological paths in parallel and invest on them, because it is not enough. I mean, if you look at data centers altogether, the different research analysis, they consume like 1, 2 to 3% of the world total electricity consumption. And that is projected to be somewhere around 20% in the next 10, 15 years. And that's a huge jump. So considering the current global energy production capabilities, that currently only 1/3 of it is renewable, and add to that this huge growth, potential exponential growth of the data centers, then you realize what the challenge is. We hardly can meet our current goals of sustainability by switching to the power. Like, we talk about hydrogen, it's very nice hydrogen. There's no, to be honest, there's not enough infrastructure for hydrogen yet. So it's not a 1-2 year plan, but we need to invest on it. So these are a few examples I could think now, but in this short time, but each of them can have discussions, hours of discussions to see if they're feasible or not.
So that was interesting, the small thermal power plant example that you gave, because I think a month back in Philippines, there was an abandoned nuclear power plant which was used to power, I mean, it was abandoned, but they were converting it into a data center and probably using some bits of, I mean, it will not be abandoned, but not completely, but some bits of thermal power to power some of the basic requirements. So perhaps that I'm assuming that probably would have gone on. So that's interesting. So now that we have sustainability and we know that there are these technologies which are AI, IoT, which is coming in, and all these things are set to power. Let me come to the power side again, and so what are the challenges? Is it, for example, if I say that we need to power this data center in a couple of years entirely through renewable energy? Let me put this question right up front. Is it as easy as just making a statement out there, or does it need a lot of sort of checklists and a lot of processes to be sort of looked into to achieve that goal? So if I could just get a sense, I'll start with you, Hassam, since what are the challenges you see typically in, renewable energy or sustainability powered data centers?
Very, very good point. As I mentioned, this is the greatest challenge of all time. Not just power by itself. I mean, some cities, some data center hubs already have faced this shortage of power itself, even in its conventional form, which is it's just halting the further growth of them, which is not a nice thing if you're looking at digital transformation. So adding to that, the renewable power is a real challenge now. So it's good in a true meaning of sustainability. I see it a very, very big challenge. Of course, it will be taken, but it's not something that in a short term is achievable. We need to plan it and have the transition period. So we have, and we don't need to have the sustainability and green energy, something that is a bad practice of greenwashing. It should be really properly planned and done. And as a matter of fact, there are lots of data center developers that they have at their organizational corporate level sustainability, but we see them that are willing to go to some regions because obviously you need to expand cloud services in that region, and they have to live with that power which is available in that certain region, certain country. And unfortunately, renewables are not immediately available at that scale. So we see a big challenge in many regions. And if you look at the Middle East, I'm not talking about Dubai, there are tremendous, amazing things done in a few regions here in the Middle East. As an infrastructure, there are lots of billions of dollars of investments in green energy. We've got solar plants, nuclear power plants. But if you look at the GCC in Middle East together, in the last, up to at least 2021, the share of the renewable energy in the total energy production has declined and it sits somewhere around below 5%. And that's not because they're not being investment. These investment in green energy is not keeping up with the increase of the total power. And so that gives you a little picture and what the challenges are. I mean, we can maybe succeed in one region, but if you look at it, the wider Middle East region, it's a big challenge which needs proper planning, legislation, incentives in order to achieve it.
Interesting. Tamar, your views?
I'll take it from the point where he ended, actually. If we're talking about renewable energy and green energy, I think it cannot be by any of who are sitting here. Should be encouraged and supported and done by the governments and the authorities everywhere. So, because at the end of the day, it needs a lot of investment, a huge investment to be done. Yes, we are most welcome. Yes, we need to do this. I can say that DEWA started providing here in Dubai. They started providing a lot of incentives to whoever is going to use solar panels, whoever is using green energy, trying to use the green energy. We are, as a company, start providing the infrastructure cables which can support such green energy and green power as well. So I think it cannot be done by individuals. Individuals here, I'm talking about companies or even customers or whoever. It should be leaded and managed by the authority and the government. That's my idea, and that's what I already seen on the ground.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Beary, from a build point of view.
I'm still of the opinion that it should all start from the design point of view. We don't design optimization and then you try to get the renewable power. I don't think in the long run that is the right solution for that. Renewable power is also damaging the Mother Earth. And just by wheeling the power from some corner of the country, and we claim that I'm 100% green compliant. So my point is, in the design there are enormous opportunity to optimize the power requirement. But somehow people are not applying their mind because of the crazy of speed. Everyone wanted yesterday, as if they are not seeing the tomorrow. That is where the research and development that has to take place. The big companies, big operators like Equinix and Digital Reality and NTT, they're all the top 3 operators in the world.
And quantum switch.
And along with them, the companies like Google and Microsoft and and e-commerce giant Amazon, they must ponder over. They must create a fund. They must create a substantial fund and contact global university who are specialized in power optimization. There are universities, they are focused onto the power. That is where it has to come. And that will come when the user like the Googles and Microsoft, they must put a prerequisite that I will take the data center if the PUE is coming to that threshold point. Today it goes as high as 1.51. Some people do claim that they have achieved 1.1 or 1.2. We really don't know. We really don't know the real authenticity of that. If they say that, no, we will not take any data center where the threshold point should be less than certain achievable number, that will be the game changer. Then the operator will start working on that. And that is where the Gulf region people like Oman and UAE and Saudi, you must adapt to that. That is where you contribute to the good of this creation and this world. Otherwise, it is the same wine, same bottle. That doesn't make any major sense. Thank you.
So, Tim, a different wine, but same point. But if I could, you have presence across so many different geos also. So, how do you see this?
So actually, I think the real sustainability piece, it needs to start with us as the end consumers, and the thirst that we have, that the information that we need needs to be on our phones, needs to be on our computers within nanoseconds, and so we are our own worst enemies in the whole sustainability chain, because we then demand that from our suppliers. Our suppliers, we talked about availability. We want it always on. And so that then goes into the tick lists that the hyperscalers ask from us, that it must do this, it must do this, it must do this, the efficiency of that as well. So if we want to start somewhere in terms of sustainability and technology, let's start at the front end of this with our own usage and our own thirst for data. And that can come in many ways. It probably hasn't been invented yet. But I do think it needs to start with us and flow all the way through down to the data centers. In terms of the power that's required for these data centers and the optimization of the design and the thirst for always on, we're held to 5 nines in terms of our design. We're held to a certain PUE, which is sometimes achievable in this region, much more achievable in other regions. But that then comes, there needs to be a balance between sustainability and reliability, availability, and we're yet to get that right in any format, because it changes. I call it the accordion effect. The servers get more efficient, but we require more processing. So we have this backwards and forwards. I think there are key components where traditionally data centers have been in locations where there's lots of fiber. I think we're now seeing this moving towards data centers being next to lots of power, because the fiber is less of an issue. So we have less loss on the cable transmission, but we're all kind of walking through a minefield of sustainability. With ESG compliance becoming more and more a common item, because money becomes cheaper if you're ESG compliant. It's something that you just have to walk through. But I do believe that the availability of the service is what's driving our inefficiencies. Now, Saudi have been very clever with some of their projects, where they've now introduced going from 11 cents or 12 cents a kilowatt hour down to 4.8 cents a kilowatt hour if you're utilizing more than 80% of your connected load. That is a significant change in the whole process, which means that actually the hyperscalers and cloud providers are having to look at their efficiency levels when it comes to the delivery of their services. Traditionally, going back to your point, your 10 megawatt data center and you're only pulling 4 megawatts of power. To get those extra savings in terms of hyperscalers need to be more efficient. They're starting to be. We're seeing much more of it, but I think it's still a journey that both operator, designers, hyperscalers, clients, consumers need to go through. We need to be less reliant on instant information, and that's a challenge in its own right.
Fair enough. Which brings me to the next point. With this whole geopolitical drama that's going around right now, do you see the GCC region taking steps forward, as well as MENA also, I would include that, in sort of ensuring that you can base your infrastructure out here? You would sort of you would get better power, more renewable energy power, etc. How do you see that? I mean, is it having any sort of impact? I'm just sounding this out. That's all. I mean,
Okay, I'll start from the project which we are involved in the region here and outside of the region. I think maybe most of the people here, they're aware about it, which is the solar park of Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid solar park. I think that's something which it's not a park, it's a city. I mean, you cannot, by your eyes, you cannot reach to the end of this park. And that's a beginning here. We started in a project with collaboration between DUCAP and DIWA in one of the parks here, and it was started in Nad Al Hamar, and it was one of the biggest parks on that time. Today we are working with them on the other park, which is huge. So we are talking about moving to the sustainability and moving to the power energy, and that's what I'm talking about. That should be initiated by the government and by the authority by themselves. If we're looking to the other part of the world in the MENA region, as you mentioned, in Egypt, they are doing the same. So in the west area of Egypt, they are doing a very big solar wind panel, and too many renewable energies is going on. Morocco is the same. In Tanja and the South Desert, they are doing the same as well. So, I mean, there is in the MENA region, there is a lot of utilization of the natural resources which we have, the sun and the wind, and we started doing this. We as a company, as a government, even it started already supporting this kind of projects, dominating this kind of projects, and it's working and it's developing. And once upon a time, I'm not talking about decades or years. I mean, within maybe a couple of years, you can find the output of all this development and technology which is going on. So I think there is a lot of development going on. It's initiated and controlled and pushed by the governments and the authorities, and I think we reached a certain good point, as I mentioned.
You see, the new technology, when you speak, the liquid cooling system, that doesn't require much of power. Liquid cooling system or bloom energy, bloom energy also an amazing thing, especially for the Gulf country, because you have ample gas availability is there, and that is where one need to work. Unfortunately, the bloom energy inventor, they couldn't come with the commercial viability. Something bothering, I don't know what is the reason. But otherwise, those are the real game changer. Power reduction can be substantial without disturbing the operational efficiency. And I know, again, when I'm talking about the design, there's a designer, there's an architect, there's a client, there's a developer, there is an operator. What we need to do, that all these stakeholders should come in one single platform and then work out what is our end product required. The time, the cost, the efficiency, and what way we can contribute the good of the mankind. That is how the design should be. But design is not like that. It is all in silos, and some name, some what do you call star rating. With that, things are happening. We must go beyond that.
Okay, coming back to point, the way I understood, it can work maybe in a short-term, intermediate term. It's a very interesting thing that you mentioned, and obviously we've got a good infrastructure. It can give us good incentives, but the problem that it brings with it is the issue of data sovereignty and privacies and where the data is stored, which maybe would not be acceptable. So I don't see that as the way the current setup and the rules and regulatories of the data sovereignty is, because the near example of that is in Africa, that currently, or in the past few years, most of the data processing have been done in data centers in Europe. And now, the past few years, they introduced country by country their data sovereignty regulations. And that's why we see a huge boom of data centers in Africa, because each country, each region wants to have their data stored in their country. So now the whole load is planned to be shifted from those data centers. So it worked for some time, but it may not because of this issue. But nevertheless, you should utilize this as an incentive to to make it more attractive for the businesses to grow. So it's a positive thing that you have let's say, more green infrastructure, affordable one. One of the, let's say, even the solar that you mentioned is I think broke 2 times the world record in providing the cheapest solar power. And so that's the amount of energy that's nowhere in the world has got achieved this price per kilowatt. So that's a great thing. I think we need to build on it in order because there's a lot to come already in this region. If you think about smart cities, the more workload. So the aim should be to develop them, make it future-proof, and add to that and attract more businesses, which eventually will drive more in the economy, will bring more demand. So you will have to deal with this region and use those lessons learned probably somewhere else.
So in terms of renewable energy, plugging it into a data center. So to give you some metrics, to the project that we have in Saudi Arabia, we have a 200,000 square meter piece of land next to us, just going through the process of getting planning permission for a solar farm. But to support a 12 megawatt data center for 24 hours a day is going to mean that we have to put 72 megawatts of solar in to be able to support that. And then we've got the batteries, and then we've got the maintenance of that, and we've got all those different things. The UPS is the whole process. So fundamentally, if we're going to achieve the real green data center, we have to strip it back and look at what are all the different options: hydrogen, compressed air, solar, wind, because all of them have a process, and all of them have a cap on where they go from being usable to commercially unusable. And so when we're looking at our infrastructure, particularly with what we do, we look at the building energy systems. How can we support those, whether there's a new form of battery that comes up, or there's a new film that you can paint onto the solar panels that mean the sand doesn't stick to it. There are so many different things that have to go into this, but it is an absolute minefield to achieve this. And going back to, it is 3% of the world's power at the moment, and it's going to keep increasing because we have this thirst for data. And I can't, as much as I think sometimes it's got to stop, I can't see it stopping, which is a good thing for being an operator. But the green challenge is something that needs to be an educational process all the way through, and for me, it's a challenge that we come up against daily. We're going to start being penalised with 2030 carbon neutral from all the clients, particularly the hyperscale clients. It's something that is not that far away. And we're a long way from solving that. And we're building buildings that are 10 to 15 years old, 10 to 15 year life cycles. So we've got to think about that as part of our design process.
So there's so many aspects to this conversation and so many interesting stuff that probably I can still think of. But before wrapping, let me just pass one final point. According to you, are there any technologies that will be irrelevant or which will be more relevant perhaps, which would help in at least assessing this whole balance of sustainability and tech adoption?
Just today, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid announced that with a meeting with Moyat, Ministry of Industry and Advanced Technology, that Dubai and UAE should focus on the Industry 4.0. So Industry 4.0 is more relative and more related to the OT. It's not more about IT, because it's related more to the MES, IoT, IIoT, whoever knowing the difference between IoT and IoT. So I think the whole era coming now, it's focused on this part. I mean, everybody is aware, maybe not most of the people here coming from the background of ERPs and systems and all of this, but it's the market and the technology itself, it's saturated already from this part of systems. So the new era, not the new era, the new coming 5 eras now, it will be more in communication and Industry 4.0 or 5.0, which is very soon it's coming. So I think moving to this technology and focusing on the communication, I think the next part is looking to where we are going to host this, where you are going to host this kind of technology, the availability, the security of this part, which is very important right now. When you are talking about Industry 4.0 and operational technology, you're not only talking about manufacturing or you are talking about nuclear stations, you're talking about power stations, you're talking about all of this is related more to the OT. So how you are going to secure it, how you are going to make it available 24/7, how to find disaster recovery, and where you're going to host it. So all of this, it's a combination of where the future is going to be and how you should be available with this particular technology and this particular requirements on the market. So I think the more focus on the future is communication and Industry 4.0 or operation technology. That's my point.
Anybody else?
So I think the challenge here is to match the load in the data center with the efficiency of the equipment. And there's always an overhead when you're running a data center that if there was no load on it whatsoever, then you're still pulling power, whether that's the lights or whether that's the fans on the chillers, whatever it is. So the technology that needs and is becoming more available is the management of the efficiencies of that equipment, the scalability of it, to micromanage and to predict the loads that are coming through the data centers to make them more efficient, to make the PUE more manageable, and that's going to be the AI that manages the data centers, and the efficiency of that is going to be a key element of sustainability. Now, in the GCC, we have extreme temperatures. We have some big challenges in terms of dry bulb, wet bulb environments. But in Europe, where we don't have a little gain of efficiency, doesn't really make a big difference in the scheme of things. But out here, just a small gain in technology will increase the efficiency of the building 20, 30, 40%. And that's where we need to bring that expertise or use the expertise locally to be able to look at how do you manage an office environment here, how do you manage an industrial environment here, and apply that to a data center environment where those efficiencies are really needed.
See, one area we can also explore is about the seabed technology. Can we place the entire data center unit on the seabed? That means, the entire heat generation is fully taken care. But the challenge is, 2 kilometers beneath, how the control, how the, accessibility, and God forbid it's all mission critical. Tomorrow something happens. That is where we need to use the technology. I feel for data center to make it more sustainable, it is technology and technology. Like machine learning and the IoT of things, all that we need to work. So that, without human interface, the entire system should run. See, I have a reason for that. Because last 6 years only we are developing for data center, project for entity and, Equinix also we are doing a job now and digital reality, STT and, company like that. So earlier for 30 years we were, creating space for IT industry, starting from Texas Instrument to, IBM and, you name it, Sun Microsystem, all that. As you know, Bangalore is the Silicon Valley of India. So we used to supply them, and initially when they came, they said the requirement is 1.6 kVA per 100 square foot, which has come after 20 years, it has come to 1 kVA per 100 square foot. Recent past, we had a reality check. When you had a reality check, you will be surprised to note that, the 60% of the design is even today is old designed. There's a scope to reduce 60%. So I'm 100% sure the same reality check if we do on the data center, we can make it more robust and lesser power consumption. So that change of heart is required. So it's not a time for mind, it's a change of heart. Thank you.
Okay, just that, I totally also agree with Tim previously just mentioned about the energy efficiency and management. I absolutely agree, because if you look at the data centers, the bulk of the energy consumption is by the IT equipment themselves. And of course, in this region, because of the climate, there's lots of also energy which is required to make the infrastructure efficient, or especially for the cooling system. In order to provide cooling, lots of energy is used by the cooling system. So there is huge potential here, especially in this region where you cannot have it, let's say in the other parts of the world, which they enjoy colder climates. So it's absolutely important to make that system very efficient. Not just at the equipment level, but also how you operate it, and what add-ons you can have to that system to make it more efficient. But that does not leave the IT side of it. Let's say if you did fantastic job, all of the things on the infrastructure is to the minimum, but you still have your IT load. And nobody, unfortunately, when they talk about PUE, the PUE is a buzzword now everywhere. They talk about improve the efficiency of the data center. Nobody focusing on the IT itself, which is I see there's lots of potential there to be done, because the aim is you need that data processing. So there's nothing that you can reduce the load. But there's a lot you can do how you operate that IT equipment, how you deploy your softwares, how you run them, how do you sequence activities, which can help your IT equipment to work more optimally, at the optimal point. And what I see, especially even in the largest organization of all, there is a lack of communication between the software side, IT side, cloud services, and the infrastructure side of the services. And even large organizations, they have internal customers for software, and they have, within one organization, they're not communicating the way they should. I think there's lots of potential there that the software side and IT side be aware of the workload that they operate. They want to process it at a certain time, may have a different energy consumption rates, because if the infrastructure is very reliant on different timing, efficiency is not flat on the energy side. And that gives you the opportunity, because let's say chillers, they work in a different efficiency when it's warmer than it's colder. So maybe you can schedule some of your events to run in the times which they are more efficient. I mean, there's lots of communication that can be done, and I think what is not going to be outdated, or maybe less, is the management and control system. This traditional way of automation and the management and even maintenance, I think in the future will be tremendously different, would be just different, because I think there should be more artificial intelligence analytics put into it, because they became so complex to find the interlink and the synergies between different systems, and add to that different source of the energy which will come. So you will have different source of energy. You will have solar, you will have the grid, conventional power, you may have different storage system, battery storage, other types, and different pricing schemes. So it will become so complex that the traditional way of managing stuff is not going to keep up with it.
I'll open the floor up for questions. Yeah, please. If you have a point, yeah, please. Yeah, I open the floor to questions. Yeah, you can just go ahead.
Yeah. We are always thinking about how to maintain the energy producing by the hardware. But I see also a very potential to check the manufacturer of the equipment itself. Are not looking to why they are producing this much heat. In my opinion, heat means inefficient. Heat is coming with high computing, I know, okay. But if we focus more, like the main processor and the main equipment of IT, to be more efficient, I think the heat is going to be less, and the way we are trying to treat this heat in the data centers would be more less.
I totally agree. The challenge here is that the IT equipment, unfortunately, they are not as responsive to part load in terms of optimizing the energy and efficiency as, let's say, a chiller is, or as the other infrastructure is. And they are not very efficiently, at least as of now, doing it. Some rotary equipment, let's say hard disk, is more possible than, let's say, CPU. Unfortunately, even if you need a certain power, by reducing like your workload, the efficiency will drop, because you will still, even if the server is idle, sometimes can use 60-70% of its peak power just being idle, be ready to accept the workload. And that is the problem. Unfortunately, there's a problem in the manufacturing as of now. They're working, but what can you do? What you can do is to manage it, identify those servers which are not required, because that's a big challenge. Maybe the other guys which are operators can also comment. The challenge is that you cannot, because of the response time to boot up again, you have to keep that because you're working. So there's a time difference to come up. But that's where I said that when you have analytics, when you can forecast a workload coming, then you can better utilize the IT equipment. You can switch it off or put it in more idle mode, knowing that the work is loud. Then you can, in timely manner, bring it up to the point is needed. And you will be surprised. Many data centers, they call it zombie service. They're just running there, and you think they're doing something, but just consuming power. You have the best infrastructure, let's say the top-notch chillers, but power is just wasted to heat. So that's the problem.
In the interest of time, I think we'll have to close. Thanks, everybody, so much. Shukran, and it was really good to hear your insights. Over to you, Litsa.
Thank you. Why don't we give them a round of applause?